Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. It is time for a new book review today, and today I have the pleasure of sharing my lessons learned in Anita Brookner's book called A Start in Life. Now, I read an Anita Brookner book, Hotel du Lac, which was her Booker Prize winning book a couple of weeks ago, and I loved her writing and I loved her female characters. I somehow connected with them. I thought to myself, I've got to get down to the library and see what other books they have, and I would love to read her entire works. The way I choose books in a library, there's no rhyme or reason. I simply stick my hand into the shelves and pull out something, and whatever that something is, I will read it. And I know that is typically not the way to do it, but I find that sometimes when you don't know or you don't preempt what you might be reading, you are in for a pleasant surprise. And that surprise could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. In the majority of the cases, I find that I've been reading books that somehow were meant to fall into my hands. Somehow there's a message in them. Of course, we think, oh, maybe it's the universe saying something to me. But most of all, I think what it is I will just happen to glean a reflection or something that I can connect with in the writing, in the story, in the characters, and then somehow align it to what is happening in my life, or certain situations that have happened in my life, or the people in my life, or in order for me to try and grapple and try and understand it. So I don't think that there's the universe trying to tell me something. It just happens to be the right book at the right time that happened to fall into my hands, and then I will make some judgments or some reflections or some lessons from it. I'm so glad that Anita Brookner books fell into my hand, because I love her writing, and also her situation being that in her 50s, she was 53 before she decided to really change tack and do a completely different career. I think she was an art historian. She was quite exceptional in her field, a very smart, articulate, intelligent woman who then decided, I'm going to change careers, and decided to write novels. Even that in itself is very indicative of the time that I'm also going through currently, around the same age as Anita Brookner, having left formal work behind me about a year ago now, and still trying to figure out what it is that I want to do next. And it was the reason why I changed my YouTube channel from a learning focus into a book focus, so that I could glean those reflections and those lessons, and somehow then also try and see if literature was able to inspire me again with some new work or some new skills that I could do to move on to this next phase of my life. Anita Brookner was at a very similar age when she started writing her books as to what I am now, and so I guess her characters in the books all are very similar to the things that have happened to me or the people that I've come across, as indeed many people have. It's not just me. I'm sure that you would have read many books and somehow connected with some part of the story, or the characters, or the situations, or the emotions. She writes so beautifully in this book, and this was her very first book that she wrote after she changed careers. And for a first novel, man, am I jealous? Am I jealous? If only I could write like this. If only I could write such evocative language that instantly just brings you into a situation. Really is not only amusing at the same time, but it's also something that you feel for the people in the stories, whether they're going through good or bad things. You somehow can still connect. What I loved about this novel was the very first sentence that sucked me right in. She writes, Dr. Weiss at 40 knew that her life had been ruined by literature. Now, I knew that my life had been ruined by literature a lot earlier than 40. Later in life, I decided to go back to literature in order for me to understand myself and to understand what it is that I want to do next. You know, what is it that I want to do in my life? What do I want to create? I want to do things without the noise of people out there who are in similar fields to me. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to create. I wanted to explore. I wanted to do stuff, especially post-COVID, where I feel that it had completely changed my mindset in a lot of things. And so when I read a book by Anita Brookner, and this is the only second one, I kind of feel for her female characters because somehow they too are exploring in their own ways. Now, this is the only second book that I have read. When this book came out, given that it was her very first book that she had written post her old career and into her new career, I was so jealous. If only I could write like this, and then maybe the new phase of my life, maybe I was meant to be a writer. I don't know. If I was meant to be a writer, I'd be writing, because blog writing doesn't, anyway. Okay, so this book is about Ruth Weiss, who is in her 40s. She is doing studies into the women of Balzac, and I have to say that I have not read any Balzac. I'd like to one day, and I will do so, and that's one piece of the book that I feel as if I'm missing because I didn't understand the references to women of Balzac, and so maybe there is a big piece that I'm missing there. But she's someone who is reflecting back on her life, and as she reflects back on her life, I'll read this particular paragraph where it basically preempts what is going to happen. She said it started much earlier than that, when at an unremembered moment in her extreme infancy, she had fallen asleep enraptured as a nurse breathed the words, "Cinderella shall go to the ball." And so that preempts this idea of a woman who is looking forward to a ball or a good life or experience in life or some excitement in life. Maybe she's waiting for her Prince Charming, we don't know. So it kind of preempts this feeling that her life is missing somehow, that she has some lack in her life, and that she needs to be given this opportunity to go to a ball, to go and experience life of her own. Now, in the Cinderella story, we had those three ugly sisters. Now, the three ugly sisters in this book could be represented by her mother, father, and I would even say her housekeeper by the name of Mrs. Cutler. Her parents were utterly atrocious. They were children. Her mother, imagine her mother as being a famous actress, young, beautiful, slim, admired, well loved by everyone, very, very social, didn't need to lift a finger because everything was done for her. As over time, obviously, she's someone who couldn't find work anymore, and all of a sudden she decides that she's just going to take to bed because that's where she looks the best, have everyone around her do what she wants. And at the same time, we have her henpecked husband, George, who is also a child in himself, who wants to be pampered by his wife, but his wife can't cook, can't do anything for him. And he feels as if he needs to be looked after and pampered like a spoilt little boy, to be fed and to be looked after by the women in his life. And he feels resentment that he doesn't get it. Although he does have an affair, and the lady who he has the affair with pampers him, feeds him, and he puts on weight, and he becomes kind of like that spoiled boy child. Then we have Mrs. Cutler, who is the housekeeper, who smokes, who doesn't even do anything in the house, doesn't even cook. We don't even know why she's even there, but she somehow seems to hang around them in their bedroom, just talking shit and smoking. How can a child actually grow up with parents like this? So we see her parents being children, and Ruth becomes the adult quite quickly in her life. But there is a foreshadowing that we start to realize that if she doesn't get out of the situation, she's going to be her parents' keepers for the rest of her life. She will never know the joy of living her own life, of choosing her own things, of doing the things that she wants, of finding her own friends and friendships, and finding love in her life. If she hangs around with her parents, she's not going to get all that. And so, as you can understand, this is a story of young Ruth who has an opportunity to go to Paris, and at Paris she discovers a whole heap of things. She discovers herself. But then when her parents become sick, she has to make a choice whether she stays or she goes back to London. Now, she does go back to London, but I'm not going to say what happens here. Rightly or wrongly, she has been given a choice, and as the good girl, she goes back to look after her parents. And her parents, to me, are utterly childish, brattish, the way they behave to her. And you think to yourself, oh my God, she should get out of this situation because they're not doing her any favors. She's going to be stuck in this awful situation where she doesn't discover herself. She doesn't then starts to be in her own world. And maybe this is where Anita Brookner was saying that, you know, for the Ruth Weiss's character, she was stuck in literature. Well, in literature, all the good things or the bad things happen. But, you know, in literature, we could let our minds wander. We can fall in love. We can find our prince. We can actually kill the bad guys. We can basically explore. But sometimes in literature, it's not like in life. It's not to expect it like to turn out in life, and that is what happens. So I felt very sad for Ruth in some way, because she made the choice to do what she did. At the same time, at the end of the book, it did read as if it was her choice, and she's still not happy, but she has committed to the choice that she has made, and she's making the best of it. So for me, A Start in Life was a really good start, I guess, to the writing of Anita Brookner, and I look forward to reading more of her female characters, more of her books, because in some way I think I can connect to the characters in some way. I definitely connected to the Ruth Weiss character here, but at the same time I also have come across some very childish and toxic situations with people, and others who have made a choice to decide whether they stay or go. I think we all have been in certain situations like that. It doesn't have to be with parents, but mostly with friends and other people in our lives, and where we are forced to make a choice whether to do what we think is right for ourselves, or whether the expectations of what others place on us to do for them. That's Anita Brookner's A Start in Life. If you've read any of her other books, please let me know. I'd be interested in your thoughts about them. In particular, if you have a Brookner book that you love, please recommend it here. I would love to find out if our library has got it. It is something that I'm going to continue reading simply because I can connect in some way with all her female characters. All right then, thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Bye for now.